Welcome to the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. You might remember earlier this year we spoke to an Australian company called Envirosuite. Envirosuite uses technology to help solve environmental challenges. Think managing airport noise at Heathrow or monitoring air pollution across some of the world's biggest cities. Since we spoke in February, momentum has continued to grow around environmental issues, and more companies are looking for ways to meet both regulations and the expectations of shareholders. It puts Envirosuite in a pretty exciting position. Jason Cooper is the Chief Executive of Envirosuite. Jason, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Thank you very much for having me.
So why is Envirosuite a stock to watch? Now, there is background to this. Matthew Kidman's a regular on the show here from Centennial Asset Management. He likes Envirosuite. Why do you think he and the rest of us should be watching and paying attention to Envirosuite?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons here. So the first one is the place that we're operating in. So Envirosuite, the name alludes to being an environmental stock, which we are. And we're broad in that we cover off three particular areas. One, which is aviation. One, which is what we call omnis, which is Latin for everything, and then the other part, which is water. And so within that environmental aspect, we are front and center driving our customers, our industry partners, achieve their ESG requirements, as well as the social license in which and the community in which they're operating to. So the problem state really resonates across the world. Within our aviation sector, we're actually number one globally within that noise monitoring. And as you would experience now working from home for extended periods of time, we're probably far more in tune with the impacts of noise to our living environment. The other part there is the simple fact of the importance of the environment right now. There probably has been a really strong awakening across the globe. We've known about this for many years. But that environmental parameters is only going to become stronger. And so we've got the world's leading environmental intelligence platform, which helps us serve customers in all corners of the globe.
Okay, I'm just going to take the aviation noise monitoring example, and you're going to have to dumb it down for me, Jason. You literally have sensors or something which monitor noise pollution, and then can you help airports, for example, reduce that? Is that how it works?
Yeah, so the core is actually the software that does this. So we are a software company, but we do use sensors, some of which we do make, some of which we buy as a third party. But those sensors would go around an airport and they're noise monitoring terminals. When a plane comes to land, and let's think about Sydney as an example, when a plane comes to land at Sydney, depending on its approach speed, the descent rate, and then certain other conditions like wind and crosswinds, the plane will emit noise. Now, if it comes in too fast, too steep, it exceeds noise parameters. So what we're able to do with very, very fine accuracy is actually understand what particular plane came in, at what descent, at what angle, at what speed, understanding the decibel range and how that affects the fabric around Sydney Airport. So if you're somebody living near the Sydney Airport, you know when you hear something that, hey, that's abnormal. You can actually use our system to go in and say what particular plane that was. The way the airports use that is a compliance framework. So they don't want to break that sound part, so they can actually talk to the airline or that pilot to say you exceeded that noise tolerance. So it helps the airport operate within the community. It helps the community members engage with the airport, and it helps the airlines and the pilots actually understand where they exceeded.
Okay, so I could go in and check out the 747, or we don't have 747s anymore, do we? But, the Dreamliner that came over and work out whether or not that had exceeded noise levels.
Absolutely, and this is used all across Australia through all of the major airports that you've probably flown through your life.
Oh, wow. So what about water? What are you doing in the water sphere?
So water is one of our most exciting areas. It's a startup within our company. So we acquired a company last year called AQMB, and it had two different software packages in there. One was a designer, which consulting engineers use to design different water treatment facilities. We were actually talking with one of our customers yesterday, and they were showing us the list of about 40 different water terminals all around the world that they've used this software to apply, which is quite remarkable. The second one is Optimizer, which we launched in November. Optimizer goes into water treatment facilities to reduce energy consumption, and the chemical dosage. So we use artificial intelligence, a term called deterministic modelling, which is fundamentally based on science. What we're able to do is, with all of these water treatment facilities, drinkable water, wastewater, is actually optimize the way that those plants are used. Now, this is directly contributing to reduce the impacts of climate change. And you think about how scarce water is all around the world. It is a finite resource that we need to manage. And so we've had a huge amount of opportunities come through here, which we're starting to work through. We're being selective at the moment about which deals we take early on. As you can imagine, our track record, when you bring a new product to market, you want to make sure the first 10, 20, you get absolutely right.
Yeah, so essentially, can you read the amount of contaminant in water, which allows the water treatment plant or wherever to respond to that reading? Is that broadly what we're talking about?
It's a little bit more than that. We actually use predictive modelling to understand how much water is going to be needed to be consumed on the next day based on a multitude of parameters. We then use a very, very complex scientific model and chemical modelling to understand what is the exact amount of chemical dosage and how fast the pumps have to go through at certain times to get that water output without, and this is really, really important, without changing the quality of the water.
Yeah.
The last one I just wanted to touch on, we made a press release actually about this 2 weeks ago, was a new product we've launched within the water space called SueX. So we've actually got 3 products going in our startup, which is called SueX, and Watercorp in WA have gone forward with a proof of concept. Now what this does, it looks at the sewer network in water established entities such as Watercorp, and we'll look at how that corrosion is happening in a sewer network and then come up with, again, predictive modelling to understand the impact of that. Now, this has a safety application. It also has a reduction, again, in the chemical dosage to monitor, maintain, and predict where that issue is going to be within the sewer network. If you think about the application of this, any major city, any major town around the world has a need for this technology.
Yeah. Jason, stay with me. We'll be back in a minute. I'm speaking to Jason Cooper, CEO of Envirosuite. Now, I'm not sure what I'm going to get from this question. Everything. That does sound rather broad.
Yes, it is. It is. When we're going through the naming of this, we spent about 3 months trying to come up for it. Look, the original Envirosuite company was built on what we call EI, so Environmental Intelligence Platform, and it started out with air quality, and then that grew to odor, so we can actually have sensors of smell, water quality, dust. A lot of other weather parameters come into it. So an application of this could be widespread from a port where a ship is coming in to understand what is going on with air quality, noise, to a mining site, or even think about Port Hedland is a great example, where ships are loading iron ore. We can now work with those operators, and there are multiple operators using this technology, to predict on the next day of when the ship should be loaded with iron ore so that the iron ore particles do not come into Port Hedland town. So you can imagine the significant disruption that iron ore dust particles spreading through the town could have. We are able to predict using all of these incredibly powerful scientific models to actually understand what is going to be the exact optimal point in time to load that ship.
Quite incredible. So you mentioned ESG, environmental, social and governance. It's certainly not just the flavour of the month, the flavour of the year. It's kind of the flavour of the decade because people understand we have to look after the environment as well as think about social issues. Some of the big miners have had all sorts of problems with First Australians and done the wrong thing. So that sort of fits into that. Governance, making sure that your business and processes are adequate. With the rise of ESG, that must be a good thing for Envirosuite.
Yeah, look, it is. What we've seen, there's a couple of things that have fallen, fortunately for us, in the positive. If you think about the impact of the environment and social, think about mining company having to operate within the network of the communities around that, and we have mining companies all around the world, and the governance that goes in place. Money will only flow into those entities to keep them operating if they are lined up with that. We were talking with one of our customers in North America recently where within their team, they had 20 people in their broader environmental team 12 months ago. Today, they have 100.
Wow.
And so you can see that the investment that some of these companies are making, now what we're able to do is help them reduce their operating cost, comply with their relevant ESG guidelines. And there is now, we're starting to see companies who are wanting to go one step further than that. They're not wanting just to meet the basic compliance requirements. They're wanting to be good stewards. They're wanting to actually drive this forward. So that has been a significant change for us. There's another part in North America, which is around environmental justice. There's a really bad statistic, actually, which is we tracked the number of deaths in North America to COVID. And there was a direct correlation from where there was poor air quality from chemical contaminants in those areas.
Wow.
And so what was happening was, large industrial companies were actually emitting certain parts, were affecting the health of people living in America. And actually that was one of the key areas that contributed to a large number of deaths. So Biden has come in to say the term environmental justice, and that is an area that we really have seen a significant uptick.
So the big spending of Joe Biden, he's, depending on how you count it, but up to $3 trillion environmental package, big chunks of that are earmarked for some of these things you're talking about. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep. We're already starting to see that flow through with the increase in inbound opportunities, but certainly that investment cycle we will benefit from strongly.
So what's the next 5 years look like? Obviously there's government spending, but there's shareholder activism as well. AGL Energy recently held its annual general meeting, and there was a resolution got up despite the board around having a path towards carbon emission neutrality. It's obviously shareholders and government pushing this at the moment.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely, it is. And look, we deal directly with industry. And so what we're seeing is our industry partners are really sort of driving this probably from the investor side. Absolutely. But the government will drive change. The governments will drive, greater adoption of this. I say on the annual report, now is our time. There has never been a stronger moment for Envirosuite because of that government drive, that government regulation, as well as that investor activism. So yeah, we're very buoyant about that.
You've been CEO for 6 months. Are you enjoying yourself? I suspect yes.
Yes, I'm absolutely loving it. I haven't slept much in the last 6 months. And if you look at what we have done, we've done a capital raise, I've done a rebranding exercise, we've changed our whole sales and engagement model, we've invested into product, we've brought new products to market. We've got some really exciting strategic partnerships which we're going to be launching. And I've done that primarily working from home in Melbourne. So yeah, it's been a challenge, but it's been incredibly, incredibly rewarding.
Jason, thank you for talking to Fear and Greed.
Thank you.
That was Jason Cooper, CEO of Envirosuite. This is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. Join me every morning for the full Fear and Greed podcast with all the business news you need to know. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.